In today's video, we're going to be creating one of my favorite shaders. We're going to be using it to create a looping animation, and it can be used as backgrounds as well as on materials to give amazing looks. So without any further ado, let's begin. To actually show the material, we're going to create it on two different objects. The first one is going to be a plane, and the second one is going to be a UV sphere. Now the UV sphere has to be a lot smoother, so we're just going to grab it on the x-axis, move it away, and press Ctrl 2 to give it a subdivision surface of level 2, and go to Object, Shade Smooth. Also, to actually see the shader properly, we don't want the default lamp, so we're going to press X and delete it after selecting it. Now we're going to go ahead and change our viewport shading to rendered so that we can see it right from the start, and we can click and drag from the bottom to open a new window, which we're going to go ahead and change to the shader editor. Now with our plane selected, we're going to add in a new material, and we're going to call this material as the material. Now we're going to select our UV sphere, then shift select the plane and press Ctrl L, link materials, so that the material gets applied to both the plane and the sphere. Now let's just work with the plane for now, and we can see how it looks on the sphere later on. Let's press 7 and just zoom in, and let's go ahead and start working with the material. So the material is essentially going to be a wave texture, and we're going to make changes to make some areas really bright, which gives it that 3D look. So we're going to search for a wave texture, and let's just press Ctrl Shift click with the node wrangler to see what it is. So right now it's very straight and not distorted, and the next problem is that it eases off on both the sides equally. So the first thing that we want is to have it have a sharp fall off at the edge. So to do that, instead of sine, we're going to change it to saw, and immediately you can see how it has a sharp fall off, and this already gives it a slightly 3D look. To change this now, we have to distort it. So we're going to go ahead and increase the distortion to a really high value, and we want it to be so distorted that you can't actually tell how the waves are, because if you have the distortion value too low, so something like 10, you can clearly see the entire waves. I don't want that, but you could prefer that if that's what you need. But I'm going to increase the distortion to something like 50. And essentially, when you increase the distortion, I feel like the scale has also become too large. I'm just going to reduce the scale a little bit, and that should be fine. So let's make it 4.5. So now the next thing that we have to do is actually get these areas that are light to become really bright in some areas, and the dark areas to become really dark in some others. So in order to make the entire thing brighter and darker, you can always multiply it, or a method of repeated multiplication is power. So we're going to go ahead and add in a math node and change the type from add to power, and that way we can actually increase the exponent to make it much darker, that is, make the darker regions much darker, and we can actually decrease it to make the brighter regions even brighter. However, we don't want it to be happening for everything together, although again, you could use this to your advantage. But what I want is to have some areas go really light and some areas go really dark. Now we could do that with a noise texture, but the factor of the noise texture goes from 0 to 1. So we're going to use a Musgrave texture, because that has a height output, and the height output can go beyond 1 as well by default, and we don't have to add in another math node or anything. And just like that, you can see how some areas are really bright and some areas are really dark. Now in order to actually get the full effect of this particular shader, we're going to take this output from the power node and plug that into the emission strength of the principled BSDF, and we're going to press Ctrl Shift click on the principled BSDF to actually see the output. However, we can't see anything right now because the emission strength is set to black. We have to slightly increase it, and we start seeing what it looks like. The second thing is, because we are emitting anyway, we can go ahead and change the base color all the way to black, and that way the shadows come out even more prominently. The next thing is, if you want it to have any type of color, you can go ahead and just increase the saturation and change the hue accordingly. If you want it to be some sort of an acid or whatever it may be, you can go ahead and make it a hue of 0.33 or maybe a hue of 0.5 to give it a really nice blue look. Again, up to you and your own preferences. Now, if you want the bright areas to be even brighter, what you could do is actually go to the last socket of your Musgrave texture and just decrease it from 2 to something really close to 1 or even below 1, and that actually makes it even brighter. However, we'll keep it at something like 1.02 for now, and we're going to go ahead and switch on all of our defaults. So we're going to switch on our blue, and we're going to go to our output properties, change the frame rate to 30 frames per second, make the end frame 300 or 150 to get a 5-second long animation. The output folder we can store to wherever we want it to be, and change the file format to FFmpeg video, encoding to MPEG-4, and the output quality to perceptually lossless. So now to actually animate this, we can just increase our timeline and go to frame 0. With the phase offset of the wave texture, we can press I with the value of 0, and then at frame 150, we can make this any even multiple of pi and it will loop. So we could say 2 star pi, or you could say 4 star pi, and I think I'm going to go with 4 pi for now so that we get 2 loops. And I'm going to press I, and now we can change the playback from play every frame to frame dropping so that we can see the actual speed and then just play the animation. And that's what it currently looks like. Now it does look like it's jittering a lot, but that's only because of the samples. When we actually render it, it'll render perfectly. Now you see it's slowing down and stopping. We don't want that. So what we'll do is we'll press T linear, and now it'll be a smooth loop, which is exactly how we want it to be. Now we can go ahead and place the camera. So we press Ctrl Alt 0 and the camera gets placed there. Let's select it, go to our camera properties, viewport display passport out all the way to 1, and you can actually render this out as its own animation. However, let's just take a look at what the sphere looks like and how we can use that to our advantage as well. So for the sphere, you already see how it gives like this nice 3D effect. Let's go to the world and just make the world also all the way down to black. And then you can just see how amazing it looks on 3D objects as well. And it gives an effect like it's been made up of multiple layers on the object. There's a lot of geometry involved. But really, this is a very light shader, and you can see there's no lag while playing it back as well. You could also go ahead and increase the detail from 2 to something really high like 7 to actually get this sort of an effect as well, which really adds a lot more to the effect, and you could create something else as well. So it's a really light shader and it works really well, and hopefully you can use it to create various animations such as this or many other looping animations. So until next time, I hope this one helped you, and don't forget to stay creative.